Getting quiet in here. Getting serious. Getting down to business. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to our monthly lecture series. This month's topic is on golf, and who better than to enlighten us on this great game of golf than three legendary PGA club professionals. When I think about these gentlemen to my right, they have not only promoted this great game of golf, but they've transcended their individual country clubs all here on Golf Road. So to my right, we are humbled and honored to have Laurie Hammer from Delray Dunes, Mr. John Fleming from Country Club of Florida, and Mr. Charlie Bowie from here, Quail Ridge. I am also pleased to welcome a moderator, a longtime friend of Quail Ridge, golf journalist for over 30 years, Mr. Craig Dolch. Thank you, Craig.
I want to join everyone by welcoming you guys tonight. Everyone, it's going to be a very special evening tonight. When you look at these three gentlemen, between them, they have over a century's worth of PGA professionalism in the house tonight. That's a lot of lessons and a lot of member guests that they've coordinated over the years. That's pretty amazing to me. What's also amazing is these three clubs here. They're so situated, so close on the aptly named Golf Road. How well they've gotten along over the years. There's not really that much rivalry between there is the road cup between Delray Dunes and Quail Ridge, but I think everyone really gets along, and I think a lot of that starts with these three gentlemen up here. They were very good friends, they remain very good friends, and I just think that's something about the game of golf that I think is that's why we love this game of golf. I'm going to start first with Laurie Hammer. You were here chronologically. You came in 1969 at Delray Dunes, and a lot of people didn't know this. You almost didn't live at Delray Dunes. You almost lived at one of the other clubs. Just talk about that real quick.
Well, the friends who brought us from Gainesville, Florida to Delray Dunes, they were involved at the Country Club of Florida, and they said, well, there's a nice lot over here. Why don't you buy the lot at the Country Club of Florida? And then we changed our minds, and he changed his mind, so we ended up at Delray Dunes.
Well, I'm sure something about that 27-second commute you had over at Delray Dunes to work every day, maybe 40 seconds during rush hour. Just take us back when you first came down here, Laurie. I mean, the cart paths weren't paved. I don't even think the roads were paved back then. But just what were your memories when you first came here on Golf Road?
Well, it was a wonderful experience for us. Delray Dunes was a Pete Dye golf course, his first golf course in Florida. We worked closely with Pete and Alice both, and a lot of our members in the beginning came from the Midwest and the Northeast, and they were country club people, and they knew how to do things. In fact, one unusual thing at Delray Dunes, when we built the golf course, Dunes Road, our main road, was not a private road. It was going to connect to Barwick Road and go into Atlantic Avenue. So we had some members who really knew what they were doing. They went to the county, they fought and they fought and they fought. And of course, that saved Delray Dunes by having a gatehouse and having the roads private. So we're very grateful for that, for sure.
Next, John Fleming, who started working at the Country Club of Florida in 1975, worked there through 2011. The Country Club of Florida, I don't know if all of you guys know this, but it was originally founded by Carlton Blunt, who was a member of Augusta National. And as he started to find a membership down here, he reached out to some of the Augusta National members, which of course drew the attention of Clifford Roberts, who we all know is the patriarch of Augusta National. And as soon as he found out about that, he told Carlton, I hope you enjoyed your last round of golf here at Augusta National, because you're not going to be playing here anymore. But that's kind of how the club started. John, just talk about when you first came down here in 1975. What were your early memories of Country Club of Florida?
Well, I was, when I came down, I had been working in the winters at Seminole as an assistant there. And when I got the job there, first playing interview that I had, I came in and it was difficult to get into the club because, not that the people were not receptive, the guard gate was kind of like the guard gate here at Quail Ridge, you know. You had to wait and pass inspection before you could get in. But once I did get past the guards there, you know, I took a drive through the property, which at that time had just finished, it hadn't completed the entire circle around the village, but just the density that was created by the home sites and very little intrusion of those home sites on the golf course. It was such a peaceful and tranquil setting that it was someplace that was really special to me. The people in those days, the club had started in 1956, so it had had close to 20 years of development at that particular time. The members were really the friendliest people that you could imagine. The membership base was primarily formed from the Midwest. Carlton Blunt was a very close friend of Chick Evans, who was the 1916 U.S. Amateur and U.S. Open champion. And he also helped with Carlton to co-found the Evans Scholar Foundation. So we had a lot of members at the country club from the Midwest, from Illinois, from Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. So big Midwestern base, smaller East Coast base, and an even smaller, we had several members from the West. But it was a fairly well-distributed membership, with again, the majority going to the Midwest, which is primarily what Quail started with and primarily what the Dunes started with. A little lower key than the high-powered East Coast at that particular time. So the openness coming from Seminole, which was very closed, I could say, as far as their demeanor and how easy it was to break down barriers that they might have formed, was a door opener for me. And the people were just fabulous to my wife and I through our entire career. The golf atmosphere was unencumbered. It was broad scoped. You came here to play golf. The club was a golf club. It's got a misnomer. The Country Club of Florida, I think it will officially be called the Country Club of Florida when our new fitness center gets finished. But prior to that, we've been a golf club all of our career. And so that fit into my feather in my cap, so to speak, very well. And we went through 35 years of wonderful times and are still enjoying every minute. So,
Charlie, you were the last arrival of the three, coming here in 1984 and working through 2015. Just talk a little bit about your early memories of Quail Ridge and how these two other head professionals welcome you here on Golf Road.
Well, I'll speak about Mr. Hammer for just 1 second, if I could. I'm the head golf professional at Shawnee Country Club in Lima, Ohio. His comments, one of our members here, Quail, happens to be a member there. And I'm thumbing through Golf Week magazine. I get to the very back page, and here's a picture of this tall, strapping, good-looking blonde guy wearing Lee slacks. And I think, who is that guy? No one can look that good. Come on. So, time goes by, and I accept the position here at Quail Ridge. And I come to find out it's Mr. Hammer. On the back page there, modeling all his clothes. I said, oh man, I bet the star right here. But they welcomed me with open arms. I called them to ask for help. What do I see for reps? Who do I see for this? Who do I see for that? And I guess the thing that intrigued me about Quail Ridge when I applied here was the fact that we had well over 100 members with single-digit handicaps and some really, really fine players here. Ralph Bogart had been the Maryland Amateur, which is where I grew up. I knew the name, Mr. Bogart. My brother had played golf with him. Ralph won the Maryland Amateur like 11 times. He was a member here. So Dale Morey was a member here, he was a runner-up in the US Amateur. So when you start throwing out names like this from years ago, back in that day, I said, wow, that has to be quite a place. And so that's what intrigued me about Quail Ridge in the beginning. But once I got here, I realized how wonderful the membership is here and how tremendous the golf professionals were in this area. And it just made me really, really love it.
Laurie, you turned professional, was able to play on the PGA Tour for a couple of years. I know you and Dave Stockton won a four-ball tournament together, and then you started working at Delray Dunes in 1969. And you and Bob Murphy came up with a great idea early on to kind of help promote the club, and more importantly, to help the community with the Bethesda Hospital Pro-Am. I think at one point it had the distinction of being the longest-running continuous Pro-Am in the United States for 41 years, and it raised almost $4 million for the hospital, which is incredible, and that's why we love golf. Just talk about your thoughts of starting that tournament, and I think didn't Jackie Gleason come there a few times early on, what that was like?
Oh boy, Jackie Gleason, yes, he did come. Anyway, that's what it was we wanted to help the community, and John Dodge and the developers wanted to do that, so Murph and I got together, we decided we'd start the Delray Dunes Bethesda Hospital Pro-Am. It was 40 years, the numbers are correct. In the 70s, we had 4,000 or 5,000 spectators a year at that tournament, which made parking all the way from Military to the Country Club of Florida and all over Delray Dunes. So it was a very successful event. Most of the tour players, it was regular tour players in the beginning, because that's what Bob Murphy was playing, and then when he turned 50, it became senior tour players or champion tour players. Lee Trevino played almost every year. We asked the ones who were the superstars if they'd come back the last year. Jack Nicklaus played, Trevino, just a whole list of really fabulous players. They were really great to us. So that was a good big push for Delray Dunes. We did get a lot of members from that event. So Quail Ridge members played, Pine Tree members, Country Club of Florida, a lot of participants from there, and of course Delray Dunes was the majority. But it was a great event.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the players were given a $3,000 check for playing in the tournament, and a lot of them didn't ever take the check. They just deposited it back. And if you imagine professional golfers playing for $3,000 these days, times have changed a little bit.
That's tip money now. No, that was true. It was a $3,000 guarantee.
What happened to Charlie's and Mike?
They're in the mail. So, yes, and we did have a number of them just refuse the money because of the respect for Bob Murphy mainly. And he and I we've been next door neighbors for 50 years. We met at college. Murph was not married. Marlene and I were married between my sophomore and junior year. And the Murphys got married after graduation, but it's been a wonderful relationship with the Murphys and Delray Dunes.
John, they talk about how wide some of the fairways are. First fairway at your course was wide enough to land a plane on. The Duke of Windsor used to come visit there, and that's how he would arrive, by landing on the first fairway in his plane. He wasn't the only celebrity there. Bing Crosby used to play there. You said Gary Player would come down and stay there and get ready for the Masters. Just talk about some of the high-profile people, celebrities that played at Country Club of Florida.
Well, I wasn't present when the Duke of Windsor was a member there, but there were some irritated ladies that were a little upset with the tire marks that their landing made, threw some huge divots over their next shot. But it is true, he did come down, and he was I never had the privilege of meeting him, but he was quite an interesting man from what I understand. Celebrities through the years, there were a lot of associations that had been created through Mr. Blunt with Chick Evans and Johnny Farrell, who won the U.S. Open and by beating Bobby Jones in 1921. He had certainly developed a long list of people that were professionals in the game as well as celebrities that came. So we had our fair share. Crosby, Hope, you had Jackie Gleason came on occasion. Interesting story, Bill Ford, member of the Ford family, when the club was first started, he also developed Jupiter Hills, William Clay Ford did. He came to the club one day, because he had heard about it, and the guards wouldn't let him in because he didn't know a member, and he said, well, could you contact me to the front desk? And the front desk got a hold of him and said, well, Mr. Ford, we'd love to have you play, but you have to accompany a member. And that was the first time anybody had ever spoken to him that way, basically. And the club did make arrangements for him to play golf that day, and he was on the 15th hole, and there was a cart that came up, and it was Mr. Blunt, and Mr. Blunt says, Clay, I'd like to talk to you, let's go to the office. And they sat in the office, and Mr. Ford left that day with a new membership certificate at the Country Club. And it was basically on the intonation that if you want to play again, you're going to have to join the club. So we had quite a bit of activity that way, but the three clubs are really rich with that type of experience. We held the Western Am in the 58th Western Amateur, in the 56th Western Amateur in 1958. We had the USGA Mixed Four-Ball Championship in 1960, and then in 1963 we had the USGA Senior Women's Open at the club. And so we had some exposure with players in that respect. Going back just quickly, these two guys on either side, we've got a special bond between the three of us. We play golf together. We're now on the wrong side of the fence as far as the physical situation, but we're limping around okay. We moved up a set of markers, and or two. We hold, 95% of our putts?
Yeah.
Yeah, 95. Next year it'll be 90. No, but we're still going at it. We have a lot of fun, and for me, it's been an honor to know both of these guys. They're terrific for the game. They've got storied past to them, and just thank you all for being here tonight.
Charlie, we all know country club members can be a little discerning at times, but not many people like you had to have two Masters champions among your membership. What was it like having Claude Harmon and Sam Snead among your members?
Well, I have to admit that I mentioned how when I was first looking at this job, we had over 100 single-digit handicappers here. And then when I saw Mr. Harmon was a member here, Sam Snead was a member here, and George Burns was a member here, and George had just won the Bing Crosby, so back in those days, the Bing Crosby clan bake, I guess if you want to call it that. I said, holy mackerel, man. It was quite a deal. Well, Sam was quite a character, and I probably couldn't tell you all the stories I heard from Sam in this setting right here.
No.
But boy, did he have some great stories, and Claude, of course, Claude was tremendous too. And as far as I know, the only club professional to win a PGA Tour event or to win the Masters, which I thought was very intriguing. And Claude could still play, reasonable when I first came here, and he would go out and give a few lessons. He'd take his 4-iron and go in the bunker and ask any members, come on over here and hit your best wedge shot, hit your best sand shot out of here. He says, I'll bet you I can get my 4-iron out of the bunker closer than you can hit any wedge shot. And it was true. I mean, I was just flabbergasted. So how do you do that? And he wouldn't give out the secret, though. But it was fun to go in the men's locker room, and he'd hold court there every day. He'd have his soup and coffee ready to go, and a little something extra in that coffee. And he'd hold court and tell a bunch of stories to all those members who were around those days. But it was terrific. It was a lot of fun.
Laurie, we mentioned the Road Cup earlier, which is, as everybody here knows, it's a great event. Brings together Delray Dunes and Quail Ridge, and it's a lot of competitiveness, but a lot of sportsmanship. I know it brings the clubs together. Talk about how you guys came up with the idea for the Road Cup.
Well, I think it was mainly Dick Horn from here and Troy Wheat from Delray Dunes. And it was, it's been a marvelous competition. You'll see the carts driving down Golf Road to get to Quail Ridge and vice versa to get to Delray Dunes. And I think I'm not sure of the exact record right now, but it's fairly even. I think Quail maybe has a little bit of a lead in the men's and the women's. I think Delray Dunes lost both this year. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's very professional. We have scorekeepers with signs on the back of the cart. We get a lot of people that come and follow, and some very good golf, some not so good golf too, but that's what makes it fun. So we hope it continues to go and thrive.
Charlie, I want to follow up and have you kind of answer the same question too. What does the Road Cup mean to Quail Ridge, and talk about how competitive it is to get on the team, what it means to the players to try and qualify for that team every year?
I think it's an incredibly special bond to find two clubs, very unusual, I would say maybe, to find two golf courses, two country clubs, so close in the spirit of the game. Quail Ridge members love Delray Dune members and vice versa. The spirit between the two clubs, if we need their help to take a foursome or two and they need our help, it's just created a really great bond between our two clubs. And it's a highly unusual situation, I would say. And the competition is very keen. When it comes time to qualify, guys want to qualify. They're out there, playing their best game, playing as well as they can play to get on the team. It's an honor to be on the team. It's an honor to represent your club, and it's an honor to players from Delray Dunes, whether it be Mr. Hammer there, I've played against a couple times, maybe not too successfully, but but it's a tremendous honor to be on that team. And I'd say both teams feel that way, and the camaraderie that it has created between our clubs amongst all the members is, I think, tremendous. Case in point, if you watch this year's event, I think we had over 80 golf carts around the last green following the last group. It was such a close match, and you have that many carts out there watching. There's a reason for that. Good golf, fun. John's one of John's sons now is a member of Delray Dunes, and he played on the Delray Dunes team this year. So pretty cool, John.
It's changing.
John, we mentioned the Augusta National influence on your club. A lot of traditions at Augusta National. Just talk a little bit about your club. It was a lot of, it was formal attire there. You just didn't show up in shorts and a golf shirt. And I know at one point you guys got a reputation, probably a little dramatic, about being one of the snobbier clubs around. Just talk about how you guys, just how formal it was, and just how entrenched the traditions are there.
Well, I'm going to back up real quick if I can, because we're coming on, guys. We've got some players, finally, at the club. And so Sean, he's going to be on the opposition, but we might have to, in a couple of years, make this the Tri-Club Golf Road Cup. So, we'd love to do it. It's interesting because stigmas die hard. The country club was the first club that was created here. The owner of the property and the developer of the club was very instrumental in the creation of the dunes, and through Carly and John Dodge and a group of investors when Quail was starting out and was in serious financial condition at the time and didn't know if it was going to survive or not. A bunch of fellows from the club came over, and there was a fellow by the name of John Mackey that was involved in this, both at the dunes and at the country club. So there's been a lot more closeness in a way that has existed than most people know about. From the standpoint of the formality of the club, let's go to Augusta National. There's a fellow by the name of Charlie Yates at Augusta National that came down from the Crow's Nest one day, and Clifford Roberts was sitting in a chair on the porch, and here's Charlie in a pair of shorts. And Mr. Roberts looked at him and he says, "Cliff, where are you playing golf today?" And he said, Well, he said, I'm gonna play right here. I'm getting ready to go tee up. He said, no, you're not. He says, the only way you're getting to do that is if you go back up in the crow's nest and put on a pair of long pants. So he did, and he came down and played. They didn't allow people to play in shorts at that particular time. I think there's quite a few clubs up north. Wingfoot was that way for quite a while. So those upbringings and that kind of stigma that Carly brought, that was one of the elements that he came. If you wanted to have lunch in the club, whether it was on the porch in the middle of the heat of late May and it's 100 degrees in the porch, you're going to wear a sport coat to lunch. That was one of the rules of the club in those days. And so we had a more formal atmosphere in those situations, certainly than golf is starting to admit today, and I hope there's some kind of a draw that's put on the boom boxes that are on the carts and everything else that start to come out, because we've seen some erosion as far as some of the qualities of the game that we all love so much and the reason we like to play it. But gradually things have loosened up a little bit. We still have some cell phone issues here and there that seem to sneak out of the bags every once in a while, but our people have kind of gone with the flow here in a lot of cases, and we got a lot of neat folks. We've got a guy in the back room there that Mr. Alan Pritchard, I saw him coming in. Alan's been a great addition to the club. We love him here, and I know you love him here at Quail as well, but we've snuck a few people from Quail, and we've snuck a few people from the Dunes through the years. So it's kind of changing the bloodlines here, and we're all getting more on one wavelength, and we love it.
Laura, you mentioned about how Pete Dye was the first course he designed in the state of Florida. We were fortunate enough to have Pete and Alice here a couple of years ago when Dick Stackhouse was inducted into the Quail Ridge Sports Hall of Fame. What an incredible night that was. Gary Woodland was here and Jack Nicklaus. Just an amazing event. But Pete would never say which course was him and his wife Alice was their most favorite, but they did point out it was the closest to their home in Gulfstream here at Delray Dunes. What was it like working with Pete, and how involved was he once the course was built, just to try and keep a hold of his baby?
Well, Pete, he would admit this. He was running late. We were shooting for December 1st, 1969. He was running late, and so the developers threw him out, and they finished it themselves. And in 1977, the members voted about 85% to have him come back and do it the way he would have done it before. Of course, he changes every year. It's a mound here and a mound there, and then next year there are no mounds there. So he basically, incredibly, never charged us. He would come almost every year to tweak here and there, never charge us a dime. Alice would come out, Pete would come out, they'd come to play once in a while. But they just been great friends of us, and we saw them many times in the Dominican Republic. And in fact, that's where Peavy, their son, took Pete at the very end to the Dominican, because he said it's going to be easier to get help down here. And then Pete passed away, but it was a wonderful relationship, and they just couldn't have been nicer to all the members. And he did a book signing in Delray Dunes for his book, Bury Me in a Pot Bunker, which is a pretty cool book. But he's just a great relationship for all those years with Pete and Alice.
Yeah, I remember when they redid the Dye course up at PGA Golf Club, Dick Gray, who was a longtime friend of Pete's, he was the course superintendent up there. When they redid it, he kept saying they kept finding these bunkers. They didn't even know they existed. You would just put a shovel down and realize that was another one of Pete's pot bunkers. This is a question for each of you. Go ahead and start with John first. What did you like most about your job?
Well, I didn't like my job. I love my job. And I think that's the thing that I drove my wife crazy. I was a workaholic. If there were 7 days in the week, I tried to work 9. Everything about the game has enthralled me since I was a little kid. I wasn't as successful as Laurie. I went broke in a short period of time trying to play out there. And the best thing that would happen to me was that occurred right when Vietnam was going, and Uncle Sam sent me a love note. And I ended up getting into the club business instead of trying to beat my brains out on the practice tee. And the people that you meet are the whole heartbeat of the entire situation. You meet people from so many different walks of life that have had different careers and have different experiences, but they have one thing in common, and that's the game of golf. And I'm a traditionalist. I'm probably always going to be a traditionalist because of those roots that took place with my mom and dad, who taught me how to play and tried to teach me to do the right things from a demeanor standpoint. And so when I look back on a career, it's built on people. You've got great golf courses out there. You can hit great golf shots. You can only talk about great golf shots so long, but you can talk to great people and good friends for a long, long time. And that's what I love about it.
I would obviously have to second that. I guess what attracted me was, number one, growing up in a family that my dad, both my brothers all played golf. Good golf, they're all good players. My mom even played. Never heard my mom cuss until I saw her on the golf course. First time ever. I said, oh, what's with this golf game anyway? But so once you get past the love of the game, as far as the business is concerned, it was the people that you were involved with on a day in, day out basis, all of you. And I think that was the biggest intriguing thing about, from my standpoint, I think all three of us, and that was the reason why we're in this business so long, was the opportunity to help and work with people like yourselves. If you're not a people person, I don't think you'd be up here today. But we loved the game, we loved all the people, and loved to see the smiles on your faces or the frowns on your faces when you walked in. So, oh, wow, how can I help you? Oh, nice game. So just listening to the trials and tribulations of golf and what common denominator, like John said, we all have in common, and that is the game of golf. And that's what has brought us all together, what has brought you together to Quail Ridge, Country Club of Florida, Delray Dunes, ultimately was the game of golf. And so, John, I think you're right. And being a workaholic, I know my wife would say, Charlie, she'd call me up, Charlie, you still working? Yeah, see, I'll be home in a little bit. So about 2 or 3 hours go by and I finally show up at home. But that was the game. It's the business, the nature of the business. I think we all understood that, and we did what it would take to make sure that the job got done. So walked in the door the next day, you weren't making up for what happened yesterday, you were ready to go for that day. Great business.
Laurie?
Well, I agree with both of them about the people, the marvelous people we've met over the years. And one of the things that I know John has done a lot of, and we've done quite a bit, is the traveling with the members to Pro-Ams. We've taken Pro-Am teams to Ireland, Scotland, Spain, Dominican Republic. We've done Kalos golf cruises. John and Sherry did a whole bunch of those. Those were wonderful times to really get to know the members even better. But I think we're all passionate for the game, workaholics, yes. The wives, I see the nodding. So, but it's basically the people. There's also, for me, it's the teaching. To see somebody need a lesson before a club championship match and they come back and they played really well, that's a big thrill. So it's been a great run, really.
Charlie, this is for you. You mentioned what it was like to have Masters champions in your membership. You also had some great amateur players, Gail Morey, Ralph Bogart, Johnny Owens. The Society of Seniors headquarters, national headquarters is here. It was founded by those three guys in conjunction with some others. But what was that like for you to be around amateurs that not only were great players but really loved the game?
I found it a blast. And not only was it a blast, but it was amazing how much I learned, not only as a golf professional, but as a person, but as a player. These guys were nationally known as players. And they would bring in nationally known players. Gabe Brewer was here all the time, just players of that quality. They'd bring their friends into play, and then Ralph Bogart and Dick Stackhouse and these fellows, Dale Morey got the Society of Seniors organization started, so we had an opportunity to become the home of the Society of Seniors, which was quite an honor to be able to help and run those events. We'd have their major championship here, we still do. At that time, we had it here several years in a row, now it's here every couple of years. But it was a real honor to run a tournament for these fine players coming from all over the United States. And, you were really excited to be able to show off your club and to show these gentlemen just what it was like they knew what it was like to play in championship quality tournaments because they played in the Masters and the U.S. Open and the U.S. Amateur. And of course, we were going to try to give them every opportunity to leave here and say, wow, that was a tournament that was run like a U.S. Amateur. And so it was an honor, but it was a great experience, learning experience as well. Almost every year, learn something new.
Yeah, speaking of top amateurs, I think it's interesting to point out 2014, the Palm Beach County Amateur was held at Country Club of Florida and at Quail Ridge. So just another example of how the clubs work together. Anytime we get a chance to talk to head professionals like yourself, I always want to get your best tip. Laurie, let's start with you. What is your best tip you want to give everyone out here that's going to help their game tomorrow?
Oh, my God. Tomorrow? This is going to take a little work, though.
Eventually.
Well, I'll keep it real simple. In putting, almost everybody I see on an amateur basis, when they putt, their head follows the putt. Their head follows, the shoulders follow. When we look at most of the tour players, their head is either there or their head is rotated this way, but it does not move forward. And that's a very simple thing. It takes a lot of discipline to do it. I put a quarter under the ball, tell people to keep their eye on the quarter after the ball's well gone. If we look at Tiger Woods, his eyes are there until the ball's out here. A lot less chance for the putter face to change angles.
John?
I'm going to approach it from a little bit different situation. I think the most important tip that I can give somebody is go out and have some fun. Have fun by keeping it simple, the old KISS method. We'll forget the second S on that, but keep it simple. And the thing that I would love to see players adhere to is that they don't try to take somebody else's medicine. You've got your own formula that should be simple and something that you understand. And when you perform it, it produces a result. I would cultivate my efforts on sticking with your plan that has created a positive result for you, and don't tinker. Just keep plugging away at whatever your plan is. And that's going to help you get a lot better, because it's an amazing game that people that have handicaps that are 15 shots higher than yours are telling you what you're doing wrong.
Well, I would say along the lines with Laurie there in putting, one of the lines I'd like to use is, listen for the ball to go in the hole. Like Laurie says, so many people are like this, and they're watching it go in. And I just like to say, okay, let's listen for it to go in. So let's hit your putt, listen for that ball to go in the hole. And that'll help you stay still and maybe make that crucial 3-footer for that quarter or $1, or just the pride of knowing that you beat your best friend or a couple of guys you're playing with. Those 3-footers on the last hole are the crucial ones, right? You come back crying, oh, I played good, but I missed that 3-footer. So those are the keys of why you lower your scores. So thanks, fellas, for those tips.
Charlie, we'll stay with you and work our way back. Talk about, in your mind, what is the biggest change in your business over the years, and how it operated before and how it operates now? I know you guys still aren't working here, but just over the last 30, 40 years, what you saw, how the business changed.
Well, probably the biggest change I've seen from a golf professional standpoint from the day I started to now, way back in the day when I was learning, that the golf professional, although it's kind of unusual in this situation, but the golf professional owned the pro shop, and that's the way you were brought up. You owned the merchandise in the shop, and it was a business from that standpoint. Today, you see very few golf professionals own the golf shop. Back in the day, golf professionals actually owned and or leased the golf carts. Club didn't have anything to do with it. Today, clubs all own the carts, they own the pro shop, they have everything. So there's a huge change in that sense. And I'd say probably the other difference would be today, and one last thing if I could, so much about teaching. When I grew up, it was a lot about teaching, learning how to make that player better. And today, it's become a business, and it's all about how you can provide the best possible service that you can provide. And Dan and all the fellows here that have followed Laurie and John and myself are doing tremendous jobs at that. And it's really become a business from the standpoint of running tournaments. Tournaments weren't all that big back, I think, when we first started. But today, there's so many emphasis on running events and running tournaments. So the personal relationship that you've developed, I learned to try to develop with a member today, trying to develop that personal relationship with you, it's a huge difference today. Dan, all the guys do a great job of that. And just, I think that's probably the biggest difference I see, just the merchandising part of it, probably one of the biggest things.
Well, I would say, I think the three of us were blessed. We were in the business at what was a very productive time. It was a productive time with a couple of aspects. Membership loyalty. Membership loyalty had to be earned by the three of us. It didn't come in a platter. So we owned our own shops. We were all very blessed and very fortunate that we were successful with those financial portions of it. But that was just a side business to speak of, because we're in the golf business, and that means that we teach the game of golf. And that was our primary responsibility from the standpoint, if we could maintain order with our memberships and improve their games through the process, they were going to be happy people. And they were going to, as a result, if your personality and your interest in them as people was genuine to them, they were going to help support you. I know how hard Dan and Chris over there and at the club and how hard Brad works to keep the oars in the water, and it isn't easy nowadays. And I think that they've got to work harder than we do. Not necessarily longer hours, but got to work harder to maintain personal relationships, because, you know, it seems strange to me, but people all of a sudden don't have enough time to play golf. I don't understand why they don't have enough time to play golf. They've got soccer practice, they got this, the work and everything else, but you take off a couple of days or 2 days a week, the weekends, and enjoy your leisure time and get to talk to people that are playing the same games that you are and experiencing the same problems and the same successes that you are. Helps enlarge your repertoire of abilities so much. And I'd love to see more of that take place. I'd love to see us create more time for fun, more time for a little R&R, even though you get an occasional club berry or club toss. That's okay. You gotta let the steam off a little bit, but go out there and enjoy your leisure time.
I think Delray Dunes versus Quail and the country club at this point in time, we have a lot of younger members. I mean, younger members with children in strollers, on up bicycles going down the street. And therefore, the husband and wife basically are both working, and they've got children, and they've got car payments, house payments, tuition payments, and we're finding them not playing that much golf. So we're, of course, encouraging them to play, but it's the time factor. And they probably worked on to dusk too, like the three of us did. But, and I think the pre-internet time that we were, as far as merchandise, the three of us, made a huge difference. I mean, we didn't have any Amazon drone deliveries in 4 hours with a set of clubs. So it was, in fact, I remember we opened in 69, 1970, in January, I had a couple that came in that had bought a house, and they wanted 2 sets of clubs. And we had just opened. I drove to Miami to the Wilson factory to get the 2 sets of clubs for them. That was, we're just trying to satisfy the member and keep them happy, but it's definitely a changing business, and frankly, I don't feel like we get much help from the PGA of America. We have been pushing for years for some kind of a pension plan, a hospitalization medical plan, but the PGA Tour has all of that. The PGA of America with 28 or 29,000 members does not have that. And I've written numerous letters. I'm sure John and Charlie have written letters too, but we wish that we got some more help from our national organization.
I want to open up questions to you guys. Anybody have any questions? Just raise your hand and let me know who you want to talk to, who you want to ask. Somebody's got to have a question.
They're probably hungry.
Don't you think the equipment has really changed from when you started to what it is?
Well, I don't think there's any question technology has continued. Technology's always been around, it's just much more accelerated right now, more scientific. You used to, it's interesting, I don't know if you all use TrackMan here on the lesson tee or not, but I've watched through the last number of years since TrackMan came, and I've watched the teachers that use the technology that's available in those respects, and it's an interesting process. I don't know how much all of that information with the technological side, ball spin, club face, degrees open, closed, degree of ball drop, side spins, etc., helps the member as much as hitting a good shot. I mean, if you hit a 30-yard slice, you know, why the heck did I hit the 30-yard slice? Well, I've unfortunately heard some comments, well, TrackMan said the face was open. Yeah, well, how the hell do you fix it? Yeah. So, to me, solving problems is, when you're playing poorly, you got to solve some problems, and you got to solve it in the simplest way you can, and solve it where it works for you, not just on the practice tee, but works for you on the golf course too. And that's where guys like Mr. Hogan, who I know Charlie had a wonderful experience with Mr. Hogan, and I had a couple of as well. He used to say you got to dig it out of the dirt, and there's still a whole lot of that going on, and that's one of the big things that I see.
What was the question?
Equipment.
I think the demo days at the clubs in this area are the main things that help members, because they can try a lot of different clubs, a lot of different shafts. It's hard for especially a Delray Dunes and a golf shop that small to carry enough clubs to give people a chance. Now, there's some club fitting places that are $200, $300, $400 to get club fitted. You can try a lot of clubs too. But I think it's finding the right equipment. Just because something's new doesn't mean it's better, but they certainly push it that way. I frankly think once you find a set and it seems to work, but especially if you change now from I'm sure a lot of you are using hybrids instead of some of the irons, that has helped golfers for sure. So equipment-wise, I think it's there certainly have been a lot of changes, and we see the tour players, they're trying everything new, but I mean, every stroke is $10 or $20, $50,000, so they're going to try the very best.
They give them for free.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually why the prices are so high, because they all get it for free.
Charlie, you can wait on the equipment, but also I want to ask you about your opportunity to meet Ben Hogan. I think it was before you came here. You'd won a sales award, and you got a chance to go to Fort Worth and meet the legend. What were your memories of that?
I just remember shaking hands with him, and his hand engulfed mine. It was gigantic. He had huge hands. But boy, was he passionate. We had won an award when I was the head pro at Shawnee Country Club, and they flew me in Texas there at Fort Worth. Chance to go to the plant. You listen to the stories about how fanatical he was, and he was pretty fanatical. And just listened to one of the guys there. He said, well, he'd come to my area, and there must have been a rack of 100 clubs on this rack, and he'd pull one off, and if he didn't like the looks of it, he'd give it to me, and he'd say, get rid of that whole rack, throw it away. Not good enough. Start over. And that's the way he was going through the entire plant. But when you listen to him speak, I was there 2 days at the plant there, 2 dinners with him, amongst about 25 other golf professionals. When you listen to him speak, how passionate he was about golf equipment and perfection. This is one of the things you always heard about Ben Hogan, that he was a perfectionist, and sure enough he was. And perfectionist about his equipment, perfectionist about his golf game. And one last story. Gary Wyron, who's a good friend of ours. Gary's one of the top 100 teachers for a long time, golf digest, top 100 teachers. And he oversees all the instruction at all the Trump courses. Gary was trying to make a study about Mr. Hogan. He was trying to come up with why good players are good players. So when he got to Shady Oaks there, where Mr. Hogan played, was a member there, he was watching Mr. Hogan hit shots for several days. They told him, don't talk to Ben, leave him alone, don't say a word to him, you're not allowed to talk. So finally, the last day, Mr. Hogan's hitting shots, and there was nobody on the range. He had a caddy out there, and Hogan turned around, just slammed his club in the ground, walking around in circles, smoking a cigarette. And Gary said, my God, I can't, what's wrong with this guy? He's just pure in it. So he said, I couldn't stand it. I had to go up and introduce myself when he came walking into the clubhouse. And he introduced himself to Mr. Hogan and said, I was just watching you, Mr. Hogan, hit some shots out there, and you're hitting perfect shots to the caddy out there, and I saw you got so upset. He said, why were you so mad? And he said, well, son, you must not be very observant. He said, Gary said, well, but every shot was right at the caddy. He said, no, but I want every shot to be on the same trajectory every time. I don't want one to go high and one to go low. I want the same trajectory every time with my 5-iron and my 4-iron and my 6-iron. And he turned around, just walked away. That was it. Didn't say anything else. Gary says, I stood there listening, thinking, man, am I stupid? But it was incredible to meet him. You know, you hear the stories about his accident back in the day and how he recovered from that to win the British Open, U.S. Open. It was pretty amazing. But the thing I remember him is the passion that he had about the game and about the equipment, about his equipment company. So you know in the days, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, you knew if you bought a piece of Ben Hogan equipment, it was the best quality out there. You knew that.
Any more questions?
Charlie, I think the folks here would be interested in how it was that you came here and shortly hereafter put your house up for sale.
No, you don't want to know that.
Yeah, yes, we did.
Well, I guess the interesting thing, like so many clubs, when a country club is new, you're selecting board members, and everybody was, it was a mishmash of, everybody had different ideas of which way they wanted Quail Ridge to go, what they thought would be the best for our club. And at the time, you know, whether I wanted to be there or not, I was in the middle of a lot of that. You know, I always tried to pride myself in staying out of all the goings-on of the country club. Just let me run the golf business, and I know I could do a good job of that. And I guess at that time, I was only here for a year. And I guess I went home one night and it finally gotten to me, I guess, and I said, okay, Kathy,
After a
put,
year.
tomorrow, I want you to put, call the realtor to put the sale sign up in front of the house. We're done. And she said, what's your problem? What's wrong? I said, put the sale sign up. Well, it never went up. I never left. I was here for 31 years, but I guess it just goes to show you, you know, how clubs work and how business works, how you can get frustrated sometimes. And even I thought maybe the club should go, but of course I stayed out of all that. But nobody knew that at the club. Nobody knew that I put my house up for sale except for you. How did you find out?
You told me.
But, yeah, but anyway, so I was only here 1 year. Dick Copeland was our general manager at the time, and Dick was a wonderful man. And he ended up going on to have his own headhunter company in the golf business, and very, very successful guy, very respected in our golf business. And he was the one that hired me. And I remember he called me up and said, okay, just settle down now, young man. You know, you have ups and downs in every business, and right now you're struggling. You know, you're going through some tough times. Our club is struggling. And it didn't take long, though. You know, a few months went by, and things were smooth sailing pretty much from that point on. But some interesting times back in those days.
And
We've got time. Go ahead.
Charlie, as I remember, we were playing like 70,000 rounds a year here.
We do, right now, I think, I'm not sure, Dan, exactly, but you do, what, 55,000 or 54,000 or something like that rounds a year. And it seems like a lot of rounds of golf. When I first came here, we were doing over 70,000 rounds of golf. And a lot of our members were very young. It was a new club. It was a popular thing to go to Florida and join a nice private country club. And like most places, you have a friend that joins Country Club of Florida, Delray Dunes, so you tell your friend, hey, come on, you got to join Country Club of Florida. It's an awesome place. So next thing you know, your friend comes in and joins. And so Quail was at the time. And we just became overly busy, really, at that time. And it was a tough time for our club, and I think it was one of the things that our club was struggling with. How much golf should we have? How many members should we have? And I think they've, you know, obviously things have leveled out over 30 years, but it was a tough time back then.
We've got time for one more question.
Laurie, finish that. Laurie said that he was playing 44,000 rounds.
I hear, I understand.
Yeah, in the 1970s, we were playing 44,000 rounds on 18 holes, which obviously was too much. We had 400 members, which was the maximum number of members of the bylaws, and they said, wait a minute here, so it's 400, 390, 380, got it down to about 300. We play about 25,000 rounds now, and it's very, very pleasant that way.
Well, thank everybody for coming, and more importantly, thank Laurie Hammer, John Fleming, and Charlie Bowie.
I'll just add one little quick thing if I can, because of the round comparison. We had 400 members in 1979, and we were closed 4 months in the summertime. But we managed to get it up to 12,000 rounds that year.
So,